Okay, hello and welcome to those who are joining us. We are going to get started with this wonderful conversation that I'm very excited to have with George, Alan, and Leandro in just about a minute. If you can answer the poll question that's up on your screen, it's very, very basic. Just what do you hope to get out of today's event? And you will have time later on for questions. So again, thank you for being here. All right, we have some people answering the poll question already. So I think we will kick off today's event. On behalf of the entire team at Environment+Energy Leader, my name is Jessica Hunt, and I am one of the co-presidents of the company, and I welcome you to our very much highly anticipated conversation with George Sakellaris. He is the president and CEO of Ameresco. Alan Skewis, he's the head of capital projects and sustainability for London Stadium, London being one of my absolute favorite cities in the entire world to visit. And then Leandro Garcia, Deputy Water Services Director for the city of Phoenix. So we're really excited to dive into the events with them today. But before we get started, just a few housekeeping items for all attendees. Today's event is going to be recorded, so sit back, relax, just enjoy the conversation. No need to take any notes. You'll be able to go back and watch this later on. If you have questions for any of today's speakers, please put them in the Q&A widget that's at the bottom of your screen. We will do our best, and we have a ton of content to cover today. We'll do our best to get to all of the questions before the top of the hour. But if we don't get a chance to answer your specific question, a member of one of the teams will follow up with you after the live event. We are going to have a couple other poll questions throughout today's presentation and discussion. So we thank you in advance for taking the time to answer those questions and really provide us with some valuable feedback. So just to give you a little bit of an overview of how today's discussion is going to go, George and I are going to cover a bunch of topics first before we turn it over to Alan and Leandro to give them the opportunity to talk about how Ameresco has helped them with their energy, sustainability goals, and so on. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of what to expect today. But at this point, I am very, very excited to be able to jump on today with George. George, it's been a long time since I've had the pleasure of speaking with you. How are you doing?
Very, very good. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes. And good afternoon, because I know we've got some people that are joining from all over the world right now. So yes, thank you for being on with us. And really, the premise of our entire conversation is, energy transition. So what is Ameresco's top priority in the energy transition for 2025?
Well, we have what we will call key drivers on the energy transition that it has make the environment very dynamic. And one of them, of course, is decarbonization. And in addition to that, energy security, supply of the security of the energy. And then the geopolitical trends that are going on, they create various pressures. And now what has happened, we have, of course, the transmission bottlenecks and infrastructure that needs upgrade that is not happening. And then in addition to that, you have the data centers that have created a massive demand for new energy. So what Ameresco is doing is trying to provide solutions for these particular issues. And rather than approaching it from one particular point of view, we look at the holistic approach. First, we look at the energy efficiency, and then what makes the best economic and practical sense for that particular customer. And that has created a lot of opportunities for us. Because in the past, we would try to provide what we call resiliency for the federal government and the various bases around the country. But now, and we learned a lot, bringing not only energy efficiency, combined heat and power, battery storage, and all these new technologies and the microgrids, and the base can operate as an island. Now you can bring that knowledge into the data centers. And that helps us a lot as far as MRS is concerned in broadening our offering from where we were before to incorporating this the new environment. And, but it's a great
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, huge opportunities. And how is the energy transition really evolving? If you were to separate the United States and Europe, because you're dealing with different regulations and stuff like that, and different laws depending on the country or the state that you're in.
In the United States, it's evolving. We're trying to build. First, we have the renewables, and there's of course solar, wind, but they're intermittent, and they need battery storage. So now, because we don't have many of the utilities, they don't have enough power to supply the required power for the data centers and so on. Everybody's forecasting that the load is going to double for the next couple of years. So what in the United States is happening, you see more all of the above type of an approach in providing that power. It might be combined heat and power, otherwise engines or turbines or hydroelectric, all of the above. And recently, as we will see, some of the small nuclear reactors, SMRs, they're beginning to have some traction. And then, so it's happening. And then in Europe, they have more ambitious goals. Is decarbonization, so you see more solar, more wind, more biofuels, more renewable natural gas plants that they're using those technologies, but they have done so much of the renewables, they don't have enough battery storage. So now they have the similar issues that we have over here. You see more demand in Europe for the battery storage. And then coupled with that, they have the transmission issues as we do over here as well. And over there, they're even more pronounced because each country has their own transmission systems. And they don't have enough transmission systems to go from excess, let's say in a particular country like Greece, excess renewable power, to ship it either to Italy or to the Balkans or wherever they need it. So they are evolving a lot, but it's happening a little bit differently over there, more renewables than in the United States.
No, I can definitely see that. And I know earlier, a couple minutes ago, you mentioned data centers. So if we're talking about AI, data centers, and their impact on the energy transition, what role do you think AI and data centers are really going to play in shaping future energy infrastructure? I mean, all the talk in the world is obviously about how much energy those AI and data centers use. So it's going to have to, there's going to have to be some pretty high tech solutions.
No question about it. They play a huge role, not only on the demand of the energy that they need in order to supply them, but in addition to that, they bring innovation. They make us think out of the box in order to provide them the power that they need. And then, like I said before, it might be combined heat and power, it might be battery storage, it might be solar, all of the above. You integrate it in order to provide that power. But they bring innovation. And at the end of the day, they're going to make us think better how we control the transmission systems and how we move loads around the various regions.
No, I definitely understand that.
They create, of course, a huge opportunity for a company like ours.
Because 100%. 100%. And I know I was reading an article recently about the data center energy infrastructure at the Naval Air Station Lemoore, and how you are being able to work together with the utility and data center developer CyrusOne, who we are very familiar with, to ensure building the behind the meter.
Because it's going to be all of the above in order to make sure we provide them the power. It will be a teaming between the local utility, let's say us building the energy infrastructure, and of course the client. It might be Oracle or wherever the case might be. A good example is what we're doing at the Naval Air Station in Lemoore. We work with the local utility in order to have backup power, and we local with SourceOne which basically they built in the data center, and we built in an energy facility to provide them 100 megawatts to provide the data center. But ultimately, there will be more solar and there will be more battery storage in order to have the resiliency that the data centers need. And basically, it's going to be a team effort between the local utilities and the people that they build in the actual power plants or the energy centers, and of course, the customer on the other side that owns the data center. Because
No,
the
truly.
utilities by themselves in many locations, they don't have the power. And in the United States, though, we are very lucky that we do have the natural gas. So we are able to build natural gas fire power plants, whether it's turbines or engines or whatever the case might be. And that fuel, it can become a good bridge to the future because we can clean it. We can use renewable natural gas down the road, or we can convert it to hydrogen, whatever the case might be. But those machines, those engines, they will be able to burn that fuel down the road. So we are very well put, and we have the distribution lines associated with bringing that natural gas to those centers.
No, and I think that's really important. An extremely important point to notice is how, your business, your industry has changed and is evolving and is having to adapt with the times and, figuring out ways that different resources maybe we didn't realize could work together, but are actually working together to create a more resilient infrastructure.
No question about it, and that's why we pivoted. You might say we evolved over time. We went from the energy efficiency, then to the smaller scale power plants, and then to the microgrids, because resiliency had become a big issue in every base, whether it's a Portsmouth Naval Shipyard where they maintain the nuclear submarines, right? And every storm they will lose power, and that's what happens. We say, okay, we'll build the transmission but transmission by itself is not going to solve the problem. That's why I've been arguing with the industry that the distributed generation will solve the problem, improve the reliability, and ultimately reduce the customer costs.
Yeah, no, which is fantastic. And how you said arguing with the industry, how is the industry's perception changed from the conversations that you've had with them?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question right.
Oh, in terms of, you mentioned that you're, arguing with the industry about the need for making sure that there's a total resilient system in place, not just power generation, but storage and exploring different issues. How has the industry, in your experience, how has their perception changed, and what was the big aha moment for them to say, okay, George is right, we need to...
Well, the fact that and even industrial customers now, that 5 years back they weren't concerned about resiliency, and now they are concerned because they see what's happening. And for example, you build all these renewable power plants and you have excess capacity. Ultimately, you will have an outage because during the shoulder periods, the load profiles are such that the frequency will get higher. You're going to lose the system, like it happened in Texas, it happened in Greece last year, it happened in Spain, it happens all over. And people are beginning more concerned. And now, with the data centers requiring so much power, and they know that the utilities, they don't have sufficient capacity, the demand is growing a lot, otherwise it's going to exceed the generation we have, let's say, in the United States. So many of the larger industrial and commercial customers say, wait a minute, we need backup. And I know several industrial customers right now that we are working with, and we're installing backups, resiliency. So the last 10 years, resiliency has become a big issue. And especially with what's going on with the geopolitical environment. And it started with the military bases first, going back 10 years ago, when we started doing the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard or the Savannah River Project, and so on, San Antonio base, Pearl Harbor. All of them, it was a geopolitical issue, security. But now, because the system, whether it's a transmission and there's not enough capacity in the country, generation, everybody's beginning, well, not everybody, but most people that they depend 24/7, they want resiliency.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I can see how resiliency has changed, like you mentioned, over the past 10 years and the need for it. I know we talked a little bit about electrification earlier, I really do want to dive into, and I know we're going to get, for those who are wondering about where the other speakers are, if you've just joined us, they're going to be jumping in after my
Yeah.
conversation with George. But can you talk a little bit more about the push for electrification and how that impacts energy transition? And in my mind, I think EV infrastructure, because we have an EV. And if we were going to take it on a trip, that's something that we would really have to plan out to make sure that we would be able to get from point A to point B. And the lack of infrastructure, while it is improving, at least the EV infrastructure in certain places, it's still
It,
not
it,
what it could be.
it's important how we get from A to point B,
Mm-hmm.
how what the process we use, because electrification, we're trying to electrify just about everything under the sun, right? That creates a huge demand in what I will say in an untimely fashion, too fast. You want to get there, but you're going to get in a nice planned manner. For example, we say we will electrify everything in some of the cities and towns. And take the infrastructure that they have their own transmission and distribution of their networks, like the major cities, New York, Boston, Detroit, Chicago, and so on. To upgrade those systems to electrify, the cost for the electricity will triple, if not even more than that. So why not? My point will be, why not go in a planned manner, slowly electrify, and then use natural gas. For example, downtown New York, they have a natural gas system, distribution system. Use that for the time being, and you electrify or decarbonize what I call the pipelines with renewable natural gas or with the other fuels, that possible fuels. So we do it in a phased-in manner. Otherwise, it's cost prohibitively and not practical to assume that those networks will be rebuilt and have the capacity to electrify everything. Ultimately, it's a good goal, but we should use all fuels. Well, there's no silver bullet. We should use all fuels in order to get to that ultimate goal that we want to in a timely fashion. It's going to take us time. Otherwise, it happened in some of the countries, in Germany, for example, right, where they wanted to electrify everything. They shut down all the nuclear power plants and so on, and then they had shortages. Now they go back and reopen it, and some of them, and so on. So we got to be smart about it.
No, I love that. I actually was talking with my husband the other night about that, about the different sources of power and energy, and how it's not a one size fits all, along with there's not one right answer, and that all of these systems have to be able to work together in different ways in order to in order for a company or organization or country to have truly a resilient infrastructure.
No question about it, because otherwise, you know what's going to happen. For example, when we shut all the nuclear power plants in the United States, we had what they call a stranded investment. The customer ultimately paid that, right? Now, let's say we shut down all the gas distribution lines in New York or Boston and everything else, right? Those costs, there will be a stranded investment. It will be paid by the ultimate customers again. So, and then in addition to that, because we try to accelerate the implementation of electrification and everything else, if they have to upgrade the network at New York, electrical net, forget it. Just think about digging up the streets in New York or Boston or Detroit or Chicago and so on. The cost will
Not
triple.
feasible.
We got to be smart about it. We have to do it. The goal, we know where the goal is. We know we want to go there, and but we have to be smart about how we get there.
No, I love that. And this kind of brings me to the last of our part of today's conversation is, what are the biggest challenges in your opinion, as well as the biggest opportunities you see in the energy transition as you're looking into the future, 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road?
I mean, the biggest challenges that we have right now, number one, permitting.
I believe it.
You know, and then the other one, cybersecurity, and
Okay.
that's a big issue. Then the other, extreme weather. The
Yeah.
climate change is happening. It's here, and the weather has been impacted, and that's why you see the violent storms. Whether you're trying to build a transmission line, trying to build a power plant, and so on and so forth, it's a huge risk.
Oh, I'm sure. And
You
it's
know,
not getting any better right now either for the extreme weather. So what do you do then?
And then,
How, what, yeah.
and then the other one that, and I talked about it, but I want to bring it up again. It's the transmission, the infrastructure upgrades that we want to do. And ultimately, if we just rely on transmission, central power plants, and to build the required transmission lines that will be needed, it's essentially impossible to do. And that's why our company focuses more and more on distributed generation. For example, it's much better. The customers and society will be much better to build 100 megawatts distributed on 10 stations across a particular system, let's say New York or New England, rather than build 1,000 megawatt with one or two transmission lines, let's say built in a remote location and trying to bring that power to the load centers. And I don't think people realize, from my experience back in my planning days, it costs about $1 to $2 more to bring the generation to the ultimate customer.
Okay.
Otherwise, if it costs you $1 for the generation, it costs you another dollar or more than $1 to bring it to the ultimate customer. Plus, you lose about 5 to 10% to get it there. So the distributed generation, that's why I think it's a huge opportunity. Whether it's data centers or industrial, huge opportunity, and society will be better off at the end of the day to have more distributed generation than the central locations.
Now, I think that is excellent advice to leave our audience with at this point. Whereas George, thank you for jumping on with me. Hopefully we'll be able to get back on with you in a little bit, but right now I am going to turn over the presentation to Alan Skewis, and we're going to kind of shift our focus. We're going to get a perspective from the European side in London, as well as from the United States side from the city of Phoenix. But right now, I am very pleased to introduce Alan Skewis. He's the head of capital projects and sustainability at London Stadium, and he's going to be highlighting the stadium's achievements along with future plans. So Alan, thank you for being on, and I'm going to pop back on and ask some questions to you, if you don't mind, after you're done.
No problem at all. But thank you very much for the opportunity. It's great to share what we're doing in London, and I guess what you'll get from myself is something from a sort of client perspective, a big client of Ameresco's at the moment, and someone who's a self-declared sustainability novice, really, in terms of all of the technical detail. But hopefully that helps us focus on some of the things which we need. So just to give everyone an idea, so I work at the now called London Stadium, and it was the host of the 2012 Olympic Games, which is the image you can see on the left, and some Americans with a new world record at that event at the bottom. And then what it looks like right now with the solar panels just installed by Ameresco on our roof. Can you just move to the next slide? Thanks. So, and again, to give you an idea, we're a multi-purpose venue. So we have Premier League football. West Ham United play at our stadium and play from August to May. But we've hosted Major League Baseball games. So that is the pitch, 9th of June 2024, baseball games. And then we've had concerts. That it's 11 days later with the Foo Fighters, 80,000 people watching them. And then we put into motorsports, that's Monster Jam. And then we had athletics, 60,000 people watching athletics a week later, and then back into football. So we're a pretty dynamic venue that hosts many activities during any given year. And that creates lots of energy demands on us. So I guess the two things to focus on is we have event days and non-event days where we have to use our energy. And the project we've done, so because we use about 9 million kilowatt hours of energy a year for electricity, none of that was from on-site renewables. So Ameresco were appointed to provide as many panels as we could possibly get on our roof. They worked out you could get about 6,500 square meters. They worked out what that would mean in terms of energy generation, the figures which are on the screen. And what that would mean in terms of the generation we get, and then the savings that we would get every year and over 25 years. And that expertise that Ameresco gave us allowed us to put together a good bid to our Mayor of London, to a green finance fund that we have in London. And they fund the capital cost of delivering that, and then the venue gets the savings every year from it, as well as having 10% renewable energy on site. And maybe we just one point to dwell on there is George mentioned sort of energy resilience when he was speaking. And that was really important for us because we see prices fluctuating a lot. The situation in Europe, particularly Russia invading Ukraine, that energy price in Europe went up almost 60% in 1 year. And having that resilience against financial increases it was really, really important to us, alongside obviously the carbon savings which we're making from doing that. So, and some key considerations for us was that generation payback. We will need to be cautious, need to convince people it was good enough. We obviously had roof weight loading, a very unique thing for us in the stadium, that our roof already worked really hard. And Ameresco were able to work that out for 56 bays around the stadium. And then also we were doing something very innovative. We stuck the panels to the actual roof. So Ameresco were able to help us with lots of testing, something which was really new, and we had to go through quite a lot of fire testing for us. And I think that good partnership in terms of us being able to do that and show that something innovative could be done. And just to give you an idea, so this is part of our wider sustainability plan. So I mentioned we're about 9 million kilowatt hours a year. That was 14 million in 2017. And we've done a lot to reduce consumption. So we're looking at electricity management and efficiency through reducing consumption and having more on-site renewables. But also, and this is areas where I don't think we're very expert in it at all, certainly a venue, but heating, water, waste are areas where we do certain things quite well, we do certain things certainly inefficiently. And I think that's the next step for us, is to get into those areas and to look about how we can similarly to make similar changes to be made in terms of electricity in those particular areas. Next slide. And I guess one thing something I'd always say a lot to my colleagues, this is always a combination of physical infrastructure changes like the roof solar panels, good control of those systems which you put in place. We've made massive savings in lighting, setting, fridges, TVs, particularly outside our event days, where we go up and we've got 60 to 80,000 people in the venue. Then the next day you might have 20 to 30 people in. Actually, quickly being able to move between those modes and be energy efficient is really important for us. And I guess thirdly, it's a culture, and I think George touched on that. There's a sort of growing understanding of the need to reduce carbon emissions, but getting that into people's minds and convincing of that, and actually whether that's money or carbon reductions doesn't really matter, but really pushing that home. And I think one thing I would say is those three things have to work in tandem, because we found if you just do one of them, so if you just do a physical infrastructure project but don't back it up with good controls and good cultural environment in your organization, it doesn't work nearly as well. So to just finally, and again, this is from as I say, a venue and a client's point of view, and someone who's not an expert in sustainability but wants to make changes in it, is I guess what we found is challenging people, challenging everyone about what they do and can they do it better, encouraging everyone for ideas. Some of our best ideas come from some of our most junior members of staff, quite small sometimes, but really good. Expect finance to be important, but be bold. And I think the solar, Ameresco are really able to help us in that with good information, to make people make that jump and say, yeah, this is worth doing. We'll overcome some of the complications and intricacies and the finances to make it actually work. And again, be patient. We took quite a lot of time to put things in, but got it right. And now we collect good data. So Ameresco provides us really good data about what our solar is generating. It allows us to look at trends, allows us to look at whether it's working the way we want it to, allows us to look at what our next solar and projects might be. So that's been a really great part of the project, that we're much more informed about what we're doing, both in terms of on-site generation and consumption. And I guess the final 2 points maybe is about keeping things simple. I still don't understand what TCO2e is, if I'm honest. But do understand pounds, do understand kilowatts, do understand some heat decarbonisation things. And I guess maybe that reflects the final point I make, that from our point of view, one of the things Ameresco has been able to help us a lot with is upskilling and training us in what we need and what we want, but doing it in a way which actually makes sense to us and allows us to communicate that to people who provide us with the funding and operate the stadium. So that sort of message that your clients need help, but they need help with, in a way which is really understandable. So I'll finish there, and just to say, it's been a great project to be involved in, and it's on, and we're now looking forward to generating lots of energy for the next 25 years, which will really help us financially and carbon emissions wise.
Oh, I'm sure, and thank you for sharing the background with us. And I do have a couple of questions before we get over to the city of Phoenix. And I'm sure you learned, and everybody that was working on the project learned a lot of lessons, from this whole process. So what additional advice do you have for other stadiums, for example, and how your approach to energy efficiency and decarbonization, how can that translate? And what would you say to, other sustainability managers or energy managers in terms of helping them reach their goals?
Yeah, I think I'd emphasize two things. That point about being bold and being pretty resilient yourself in terms of pushing the agenda. There's a lot of schemes which won't go ahead because somebody doesn't believe in it, doesn't believe the forecasts. When you get to something that's quite difficult or a challenge, they might find that as a way to suggest that we shouldn't go ahead with the project. So being really bold about it and resilient and pushing it through and saying, actually, this really is worth it. And that's satisfying when you get to the end of it, or when you start generating and you can say, wow, look what this is actually doing. It really is generating, in our case, 10% of our energy. It really is helping us, and our bills are going down. So that I'd emphasize. And also I think that point about culture from everybody you work with, but actually within the organizations you work within, and within in our case, our political masters. So definitely has helped us that the Mayor of London, who ultimately owns the stadium, has really made a commitment to London moving towards net zero, and that comes through. So everybody who's working within that whole family and in London understands that that's an important driver. So a bit of influencing upwards, and a bit of trying to convince people upwards that actually this is really important from a policy perspective has definitely helped us.
No, I mean, it's essential to have entire, full stakeholder buy-in from every level, and for not just the buy-in, but for someone to say, yes, all right, let's do this, but for really to understand the purpose behind why you're doing what you're doing, and how that it's not just going to, provide an amazing ROI, but also be better for the country as a whole in terms of net zero goals. So speaking of ROI, before we jump to Leandro, how have you been able to balance ROI, safety, and sustainability in this project?
So we do. So actually every project that we do, regardless of what it is, we actually assess the project, including financial ROI, including safety and some legal responsibilities, and sustainability. So even if it's not really related to sustainability, we'll include it in that and say, well, is this going to have a positive or negative effect in terms of our carbon emissions? So, and that's a pretty new thing. I think, again, George mentioned sort of in the last 5 years, there's been more awareness about the need for carbon emission sustainability to be part of decision making. I think we're getting there. And people's awareness. So having it in there, having a good balance in it, and then absolutely having a good balance on it, and being completely transparent about that. So in the roof solar case, we were saying this is led by the carbon case, but actually it does have a reasonable ROI, not as good as some other projects we could have done, but a reasonable ROI, good enough to make it worthwhile, the financial savings. And then we had to do a lot of safety stuff because it was innovative, as I mentioned, but actually saying it's worth it. It's worth doing it. And the next people to do a project like ours and to stick them things onto a membrane roof, they're going to benefit an awful lot because we've done just about all of the tests you ever can do to check on fire detection and flame resistance. So Ameresco have got all of those. You should be selling that into your next market with people with similar roofs to ours. Yeah.
Can't beat that, right?
Yeah.
That piece of advice going forward. Well, thank you, Alan. We appreciate you being able to be on with us today. Hopefully we'll get a little bit more time to talk after Leandro is done. But Leandro, I'm gonna flip it now and let's go across to the United States, to the city of Phoenix. We're gonna Leandro is going to give us a little bit of a background on how Ameresco has helped the city of Phoenix when it comes to approaches and shaping the future of municipal infrastructure, and how different American cities are leading the way and driving progress in water and energy initiatives. So just like with Alan, Leandro, I hope you don't mind if I pop back on and ask a couple questions after you're done.
Okay. So hello. So the city of Phoenix has been partnering with Ameresco for over 15 years to advance our energy transition initiatives, from citywide LED traffic signals and streetlight conversions to solar-covered parking installations across our municipal departments. Today, we'll be focusing on one of the most innovative projects in that journey, which is a renewable biogas facility at the 91st Avenue wastewater treatment plant. Next slide. So the 91st Avenue wastewater treatment plant, the largest wastewater treatment plant in Arizona, with the capacity of 230 million gallons per day. Currently, it treats about 150 million per day from 5 cities: Glendale, Mesa, Tempe, Scottsdale, and Phoenix, all part of the Shrog partnership. The plant spans over 700 acres and includes 5 separate treatment plants with expansions dating back from 2001 and 2005. So why we care so much? So biogas is produced during the digestion of organic material in 12 methane digesters, 2 acid phase digesters, and 2 transfer digesters. Uncleaned, it can be used to power equipment or flared to prevent methane release. But clean biogas, biomethane, is a valuable renewable energy source. It can fuel fleet vehicles or be injected into natural gas pipelines. A 2023 Princeton study found that wastewater treatment plants emit nearly double the methane than previously estimated. This is critical because methane is over 25 times more potent than CO2 as a greenhouse gas. Next slide. So before the biogas processing facility, 94% of our biogas was flared. Only 6% was used to run our boilers to keep our digesters at operating temperature. Next. So instead of wasting the resource, we saw an opportunity to reduce emissions, generate revenue. Shrog partnered with Ameresco in 2015 to design and build a biogas processing facility. Construction began in 2017, and by April 2019, the facility was fully operational. It processes up to 3,500 standard cubic feet per minute of biogas, the largest wastewater digester biogas to renewable natural gas facility in the United States. So to put that into perspective, the second largest facility, San Antonio Water Systems, processes only 625 SCFM and offsets 4,000 cars worth of emissions. 91st Avenue handles more than double the flow and has significantly larger environmental impact. The result, a reduction of 44,000 metric tons of CO2 annually, equivalent to taking 10,000 cars off the road. So this project wasn't without its challenges. Some of the challenges were evaluating biogas quality and quantity, navigating interagency coordination, and designing for long-term sustainability. but the lessons learned were invaluable. Early stakeholder engagement is key. Flexibility in design allows for future scalability, and data-driven decisions drive environmental and financial successes. So in summary, the 91st Avenue wastewater treatment plant had an underutilized resource. Schrag saw the opportunity to turn waste into value, and the biogas processing facility is now a national model for renewable energy from wastewater. That's all I got. Thank you.
No, sure. I would love to jump in and, just ask some questions about starting the process, seeing the need, and the ability to, utilize wastewater differently. What were some of the biggest obstacles that you faced?
Some of the biggest obstacles were probably permitting and getting all the
Like George
stakeholders
said.
involved. Yeah. Yeah, so those are probably the two obstacles.
What would you say then if you're talking to other city leaders, not necessarily the city of Phoenix, but other cities that would like to do a similar project to this, and they're trying to plan their timeline out? So if you're talking about permitting, how much time would you say that they need to budget for the whole permitting process?
I would say at least 2 years of
Okay.
permitting. Yeah, so we can get everything through ADQ and all the stakeholders involved. It is a
Okay.
lengthy process. There's a lot of lawyers involved, and it is a lengthy process. So yes, give yourself plenty of time and plenty of communication.
I can only imagine 2 years. We built a house, and I know what permitting processes go through, but
Yeah.
not anything like wastewater treatment and facilities. So in terms of the city's, long-term approach to planning and sustainability, how is this really setting a benchmark? Did this project really set a benchmark, you think, for future projects?
Just being leaders of what we do.
Yeah.
We put ourselves up there, and we just do what we do.
I love that. You do what you do. Now, if you go back to when the city first started this project, what were some of the biggest questions you wish you had asked at the very beginning, or you think the team wishes they would have asked when it came to working with Amoresco or the city in general, just throwing some out there?
I'm sorry. I don't know. I wasn't involved that much during the building. So yeah.
Okay. So when you came in then, what was your take on everything that was going on and, your role in this project?
So it was a lot of coordination with all the plant operational staff. Again, a lot of communication, and yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I do know. No, you're good. I do know we have some time for audience questions and some close up. So, George, if you're still there, and Alan, we'd love to have you jump back on and, have a few other questions to get to.
Okay.
All right. And Alan, before I didn't ask you this question too, but kind of the one I asked Leandro was, how long did your permitting process take? And how much time would you have budgeted more time, you think, in hindsight?
So by permitting, so that's an American phrase. So from us, it was our project. The project from start to finish took about 2.5 years to do.
Okay.
That included getting the funding and the business case together. We had to obviously tender. That took 3 or 4 months to get that whole process done. And then actually our planning consent for doing it. The UK has a very positive approach to solar, actually, saying that as long as it's not particularly visible, and ours isn't. Unless you're unless you're above it, you know, it's not an obvious facade. Normally you get it through what we call a non-material amendment to our planning consent. So actually that part of it was relative, touch wood for future ones, relatively clear. But the whole project took about 2.5 years. And we definitely had, like George mentioned, weather earlier on. We definitely had a thing where we were ready to. We could have started to install panels in sort of October. We did some to test that they were working, but we only did about 100 of the 3,500, and then we left it in agreement with Ameresco. Said there's no point. You're doing these things, cold weather, rains, short days. This is better to do this from March, and actually did it from March, and that was a good decision from us as client and the contractor to say, actually, that's the right way to do this because this is going to be here for 25 years plus. We don't want to have problems. Let's do it that way.
No, I love that, and the flexibility on both sides in terms of making sure that the project was, you know, as efficient as possible, and so that speaks volumes that, you know, you can pivot depending on weather or, you know, other variables that come into play. So, and then, George, this question came in. I put it for you at the very beginning of our conversation. Is how do you see power prices modeling, considering that the firm and non-firm energies are so different but charged equally?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. I was about to say, I read that question earlier, but I didn't read it as well. So I guess in terms of the price fatality, and I know this also came in terms of somebody asked a question of why should we use renewable energy as opposed to fossil fuels if you're not considering any environmental aspects because fossil fuels are less expensive?
Well, because ultimately we know our goal is to decarbonize. And that's why I said we can use, like, for example, natural gas is the cleanest fossil fuel that we have. In the United States, we have plenty of it. And we should use it, especially for the firm power plants that whether it's gas turbines or engines, whatever the case may be. But we do have the option of decarbonize it down the road. Otherwise, converting it to hydrogen or use renewable natural gas. And it might be less economical right now, it looks, but if you take into account the environmental aspects to it, I think ultimately it's probably cost more.
Yeah. No, I could not agree with you more there. And I'm glad that you put that in there because environmental impacts can get very, very expensive for a variety of reasons, whether or not, you know, you're talking about PFAS and water and emissions and air quality. So all of those are going to play into the bottom line as well.
Yeah, and that's why I said we have to be smart how we bring everything together. Otherwise, if we try to do it all, make 100% renewable battery storage, it's a little bit impractical anyway. It cannot happen. So we need the fossil fuels, but we combine them with, and actually, I can argue that solar right now and some wind, it's less expensive than fossil fuels, but it's intermittent. And you got to put the batteries associated with it, and we don't have a good storage medium of electricity yet. It's expensive because even batteries, they are a bridge to some other base load, 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, whatever the case might be. But innovation is happening. We might find the better ways of storing electricity down the road.
Yeah, yep. Innovation, again, every day we're getting things. Yeah. This one question, thank you, George, is about the solar panels that you have, Alan, at London Stadium. Are they flat panels where they adhere directly to the roof surface, or more typical foundation and bracket mounting?
No, they are very flat and flexible. Okay. They are very flat and flexible panels. Actually, when I went and visited the site, I was surprised how light they were. And how flexible they were.
I don't know if people realize how involved, George, you are in all of these projects. So what is your favorite part about visiting the sites, you know, after Ameresco has finished or even throughout the process?
I love innovation and the new technologies, but I love visiting, especially projects that they are in the cutting edge of technology. Like, for example, the stadium was the first one that we did. I wanted to make sure that I visited every renewable natural gas that we built, like the Phoenix plant. I visited, or the San Antonio. The San Antonio, by the way, was one of the first in the country that was done. We were the pioneers in the renewable natural gas fuels that we develop in this country. And I visited the site. And talking about permitting, for example, on the lesson in the Phoenix plant, it took us about almost a year and a half to get the permit and get to all the agencies. And even though it's for the city, now we go to California. We have built several renewable natural gas plants. It has taken us as much as 3 years. And that's why I say permitting is a huge issue. Now, try to permit the transmission line, let's say, from Canada to the United States, the last 10 years, and they haven't been able to get the permits. So it's a huge issue. And it takes time.
And as you mentioned earlier, geopolitical, the climate and dealing with different administrations and, whether it be the United States and different and regulations changing and funding changing. And how have you really seen, and this was a big theme last year, George, and it's continuing this year, is the relationship and the importance of public-private partnerships when it comes to these?
No, they are extremely important. And look, at the end of the day, regardless of what administration is there, if you're on a solid foundation, otherwise, what you propose to do makes good economic sense for the customer and the country. At the end of the day, you win the argument. And we've been very successful in that aspect, on both administrations. Like, for example, in the Trump administration right now, they love the performance contracts. Because it's third-party financing, and we guarantee that performance is going to happen. So most likely you will see more performance contracts. And for people that they don't know performance contract, basically we guarantee that the savings will be there on that particular facility to pay for the investment that was made and was financed through a third party. So, and I had on my board way back Paul Songas. And then he said, George, whatever we do, make sure we're in intellectual sound basis. And if it's economic and it makes good sense for the country and the customer, we will be successful. And that's the guideline that we use in growing the company and dealing with various administrations. So, for example, like the city of Phoenix right now, I think they're getting over $2 million economic benefit that we deliver to them each and every year.
That's not a small number.
Right. So it makes good economic sense for them to do it. Before it was wasted.
Yeah.
And and what's amazing, there are many facilities, wastewater and sewer treatment plants in this country. They haven't done it yet.
Well, hopefully they'll watch this and then they'll take the advice and from you and what Leandro shared and institute their own plan going forward.
Exactly. I hope so.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
It will be their best interest. Their best interest for the community, their community, and then for the country, of course, decarbonizing. Yeah. Because methane is much more potent than any, destruction to the environment than anything else we do.
Yep, we're all in this together. That's what I tell my kids that too. We all play a part. It might not seem like a large part at all times, but we all have a small part to play in keeping this world and making it healthier.
Yep, no question about
sustainable. Definitely. Well, I wanted to thank the three of you for being on with us today. This has been a wonderful conversation. For the attendees, thank you in advance for filling out the survey that's going to pop up on your screen. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And Leandro, Alan, and of course, George, thank you again for your time today. I know everyone is extremely busy, but I have thoroughly enjoyed today's conversation.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, I hope we get to talk again sooner rather than later, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. And goodbye, everybody.